Hey there. Want to talk about spiritual film and spiritual media today. It's been a while since I've done a post. Today, I'm going to do a post not so much about films, but more about television. And you can read the article I just posted at my blog, which is mysticmedia.blogspot.com. The name of the blog is Metaphysical Media, of course. And you can also check out my other stuff at my Facebook page, which is Metaphysical Media Page by Harry Wilkinson. So you can check out what I've been up to lately, since I haven't been on YouTube for a while. But today I'm talking about a trend I'm seeing on television a lot, in which sort of metaphysical concepts are being incorporated into traditional television genres like hospital shows and lawyer shows. It's very interesting to see these concepts working their way into these shows, and some are better than others. So I wanted to talk about a whole bunch since I haven't been on to do individual posts on some of them. I guess I'd say you could really go back and you could look at Touched by an Angel as maybe being the first one of those. And that's a show that used sort of divine intervention and a character who was able to hear the promptings of an angel and go out and help people through that inspiration. But in that show, that was the core of the show, was this woman being touched by an angel and going out to help others. That was what the show was built around. These shows that I'm talking about are using metaphysical concepts as just another part of the plot, rather than it being exactly central to it. And I think I first noticed it with a show that came back on maybe 2008 or 2009 on ABC called Eli Stone. And this is a show, and you can find it on DVD. They did 2 seasons of it, which is typical for these kinds of shows. They don't last long. They tend to have a good following, a loyal following, but after an initial spike when they first premiere, the audience drops to the core audience, and usually not enough to keep the show on the air for very long. The kind of ratings you need to keep shows on the air these days, very few shows can do that. But the good part of it, of course, is that with DVD and cable outlets, these shows can be, seen by a lot of people, and you can find them fairly easily. And this is one of them. Eli Stone is about a lawyer who begins to have visions due to a tumor that he has in his brain. And these visions speak to him in a variety of ways, sometimes through a musical number. I think that was the first vision he had, was a musical number. But they're telling them something about the future, and after that, he is usually brought to, or a situation is brought to him through his law office that connects to that vision that he's had. And unfortunately for him, the action that he needs to take quite often conflicts with what's necessary for him to do in his high-powered lawyer's office, and that creates conflict. And I mentioned the show here about under this topic because while certainly his visions were kind of central to the show really was a lawyer show. It worked as a lawyer show. It was about these lawyers in this law office and about the conflicts between, should I be, what side should I be working for? Should I be working for the ultra wealthy corporations, or should I be fighting for the little guy? Those kinds of things. And those are spiritual topics as well. Not as fancy as having, mystical visions. But Eli Stone, I think, was the first of these shows to really take a really standard TV genre like the lawyer show and infuse it with that. And they did a terrific job of it too. There were great plots, and they looked at the phenomena of having visions in a very realistic way. There is a portion of the brain, I believe it's the right temporal lobe, that is responsible for visions that mystics have had. And damage to the brain can cause that section of the brain to be more open. Quite often that section of the brain is overwhelmed by the left side of the brain, which handles the day-to-day materialistic functions that we have. But if that is damaged or weakened in some way, then the brain compensates with the other side. And when that happens, you become more intuitive, you become more mystical in a way, and more open to visions. And that's kind of what happened to Eli Stone. So, Eli Stone was the first of those, and I did post at mysticmedia.blogspot.com about that when it first came out, so if you want to go back and read about that, you can. Then, later on, I guess it was this season, CBS came out with a show and called A Gifted Man. And this was a standard doctor show. This is about a highly paid, prominent neurosurgeon with a very classy, wealthy clientele. He works with sports stars and models, and all kinds of famous people. And his ex-wife runs a clinic downtown for people who don't have health insurance. And it was actually a project that they started together, and when they split, the wife took the clinic and he pursued his more affluent career. So the first episode of this series, this doctor runs into his ex-wife that he hasn't seen in quite some time, and they decide to have dinner together. And she talks to him about her clinic and how she could use some help. And after that encounter with her, he comes to find out that several days earlier, she'd actually died in a car accident. And after that, he begins to encounter his wife's ghost, if you will, urging him to step forward and help out at this clinic. And so the series then becomes about his conflict between the clinic, working for patients who are poor or low income, and his wealthy, upscale practice uptown, and how he tries to balance between the two, and what decisions to make, who is more worthy of his time and talents. Does he ignore a wealthy person who's ill just because a poor person has needs, or vice versa? Ignore the poor person because they don't have health insurance and cater to the wealthy people? So it's about him finding his values, and all through this he's interacting with the spirit of his wife. They bring in some spiritual elements of the show. One of his sister's best friends is a shaman who finds out he's having these visitations and tries to help him make sense of it all. Very well written show. I highly recommend going to find it on DVD. Again, it was canceled at the end of this season. As I said, that's what generally happens to these shows. So now we have two shows on the air right now. One is called Saving Hope, which I believe is on NBC on Thursdays at 10 p.m., I think. And it takes place in a hospital, so it's your standard hospital show. It's called Hope Zion Hospital. Hope Zion. You can go look up the references to those. It's pretty it's pretty self-explanatory. But what happens at this Hope Zion Hospital is that the chief of surgery, who is engaged to be married to the lovely Erica Durant, who you might remember from Smallville. She played Lois. And she is a surgeon. They both work at this hospital. And they're on their way to, I believe it's probably a party for celebrating their engagement or something. And a terrible accident occurs, and he's put into a coma. But as he is lying in a comatose state in the hospital, his spirit is wandering the halls of this hospital, helping other patients who are either in some sort of suspended situation where they're transitioning to their death, or may also be in a coma. All the while he's trying to figure out why he's there, what's going on, and how to get back to his life. So that's an element of the show, but the main part of the show is the goings-on in this hospital, the doctors and their love affairs, typical doctor show kind of thing, except it's got this, metaphysical element to it. So now we're starting to use these tools as almost just another plot point. There's some interesting moments in it, and it's still on the air, so it hasn't completely developed. But the writing is fairly good. It's not as good as the other two that I mentioned, A Gifted Man, or even as good as Eli Stone. But in its own way, it's not bad. Much worse is a show on, I believe it's FX now, called Perception. And Perception is about a neuroscientist who also has schizophrenia, and he has skills in the way that he sees the world, thus the title of the show, Perception. So that helps him to solve mysteries for the federal government. He creates these hallucinations to help him solve these stories, because his mind is working so fast and pulling things together that he creates hallucinations to help explain them. It's an interesting concept. It doesn't work very well. It's basically a police procedural show that wants to incorporate this idea of extraordinary talent. They did the same sort of thing with Monk, who was he had a condition where he had phobias about germ phobias and that sort of thing. They've done it with I think Psych, someone who's able to sort of see around corners with things, and I think the gag was he was pretending to be psychic or something like that. It's not well written at all. The storylines are well, let's look at it this way. When the mystical element is more believable than the mystery they're trying to solve and how they solve it, something is wrong. So I can't recommend that show, but it is on the air, it is out there, and it is one of the shows that's doing this. So it seems like it's a trend, and as I said, these shows don't tend to last very long, but they keep coming back in one form or another. So my guess is that we'll see this again in another form, maybe in several, and maybe eventually there'll be some sort of hit where you will get a show that incorporates these kinds of elements and it lasts for a number of seasons. In many cases, I'm at the point where I say, not every series has to run for 11 seasons. Not every series has enough to say to run for 11 seasons. Some series are quite good and able to be done in 1 or 2 seasons, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you, other than looking at it from the point of view of writers and actors who want to continue employment, or the production company that wants to make money from it. But as I said, there's DVD sales and all of that can continue to generate revenue. Some stories, as I say, just don't lend themselves to 10, 11, 12 seasons over and over again in the traditional network way. So My guess is that these kinds of shows are like that, and that we'll see more of them, but maybe one or two will turn out to be big hits. But that's all I have to say on that, and I promise I will continue to update my video page here at YouTube, and sorry it's been so long. Take care for now.